The biggest revenue leaks that kind of cost plumbing companies thousands of dollars every year, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. If you're spending owner level time doing kind of entry level tasks, you're limiting your growth substantially. Most don't know what happens. They don't know how many calls they've missed. They don't know how many jobs they lost. They really don't know how much revenue is disappearing. Speed doesn't require more advertising. It doesn't require more leads. It simply requires a better process. And that's it. Goal isn't just to become a better plumber. The goal is to build a better business, right? Because plumbing skill gets you started, of course. Business skill is what helps you kind of grow. If you own a plumbing business, let me ask you a question. Why do some plumbing companies stay on one truck forever while others grow into businesses doing millions of dollars every year? I don't think it's because they're better plumbers. I don't think it's because they work harder. And it's not because of luck, right? I think almost every successful plumbing company follows some kind of similar path. And they go through stages. And in each stage, there's a few challenges, right? New responsibilities and a few new mistakes that can either help the business grow or quietly hold it back. Today, I kind of want to simplify that entire journey. So I want to walk you through what I think the 7 stages are that a plumbing business owner kind of goes through. And then I kind of want to walk you through, the 7 biggest revenue leaks that kind of cost plumbing companies thousands of dollars every year, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. So whether you're just starting your plumbing company or you've been in business for 20 plus years, I promise you're going to recognize yourself somewhere in this video. And even better, I'm going to give you some kind of actionable tip that you can use throughout this video so that you can take something for your own business and start improving. So grab something to write with, grab a notebook, because this isn't just another motivational business video. This is somewhat of a blueprint that you can use to help improve your business. Let's go ahead and get started. So nobody wakes up one morning and suddenly becomes a great business owner, right? It's a process. It's a grueling, grinding process. It's a series of small changes that compound over time. And the good news is that every successful plumbing company owner has gone through these same stages. The difference is some people do it intentionally while others spend years trying to figure it out through trial and error. Our goal in this discussion right now is to help you skip some of that pain. So stage 1, stop keeping everything in your head as the owner. This is where every business owner kind of should start. Most plumbing companies run on memory, right? The owner knows everything. He knows or she knows how to answer the phone, how to quote jobs, how to schedule work, how to invoice customers, collect payments, collect leads, order parts, and that kind of nobody else knows. They follow instructions, but nobody else kind of really knows. And if everything lives in your head, you can't really delegate it. So think about it. Let's say tomorrow you hire an office assistant, and I know there's probably many of you who are probably not in a position to make any hires right now. So if that's you, you need to kind of do your homework and get online, find some process or system that can do the job or task that you need done if you're unable to hire. So, but let's say you were to hire an office assistant. Could you hand them a document that explains how your company handles incoming phone calls? Could you hand them a document that explains how your scheduling process works? Could you hand them a document that explains how estimates are sent? So for most contractors, the answer is no. Not because they don't have a process. I mean, they absolutely have a process, but it's just never been written down, right? The SOPs are vital for training and mentoring your people. So here's a simple exercise. Right now, you can open a Google Doc. Every time you do something more than once, write it down. Create a document called, how we answer the phone, how we schedule jobs, how we do estimates, how we collect payments, how we ask for reviews, how we generate leads. And don't worry about making it perfect. Perfect is the enemy, right? Just start documenting. You don't have to document your whole business, right? Document, 1 or 2 things just to start. Maybe it's how you answer the phones and what you specifically say during that phone call. Maybe it's how, you collect payments, or what you do when someone, has payment issues. or maybe it's how you do reviews or referrals, or how you talk to different customers. Maybe it's your daily job routine, or your, how you handle specific problems during your job routine. Not only are you beginning to create SOPs you can use for training, but you're also creating social media content you can actually use for marketing. You're killing two birds with one stone here. So because a process that lives in your head can't be transferred to someone else, doesn't mean you can't start documenting. And until it can be transferred, you're stuck doing it forever. And there's nothing more painful than having to go back and retrain when your time is already limited. So this leads us kind of in the next stage, stage 2, buying back your time. This is one of the biggest mindset shifts owners need to make. Most contractors hire way too late. They wait until they're drowning. They wait until they're overwhelmed. They're exhausted, and then they finally hire someone. So instead, ask yourself, this question: What am I doing right now that someone else can do? Notice I didn't ask what someone else could do better. I asked what someone else could do, because your job as the owner isn't to do everything. Your job is to make sure that everything gets done. There's a difference. Let's, kind of look at your week. How much time are you spending, answering the phone, scheduling appointments, doing invoices, talking to customers, following up on estimates, doing office work, requesting reviews, maintaining your website, doing spreadsheets. None of these tasks require a master plumber, but they're all important, right? But they don't require your expertise. And if you're spending owner level time doing kind of entry level tasks, you're limiting your growth substantially. Every hour you spend doing, kind of administrative work is, an hour you're not spending improving your business. So start identifying tasks that can be eventually delegated or automated through online, research or whatnot. So that's how owners start buying back their time, one process at a time. So it leads us into stage 3, know your numbers. This one might be kind of uncomfortable for some owners, because a lot of contractors don't really know how busy they are, and they don't really know their numbers and how profitable they are. So let me ask you something. So what was your revenue last month? What was your profit? What was your average ticket? How many leads came in? How many jobs did you sell? How many jobs did you finish or complete? How long did it take? What was your close rate? If you don't identify your numbers, you're kind of flying blind. And that's not criticism. It's a lot of business owners, kind of start there, but eventually you have to start measuring things, because what gets measured gets improved, right? You create a simple scorecard, nothing fancy, nothing legit, like nothing you need a software to do. Just do it on a simple whiteboard. Track the small things. Track what leads came in. How many dials you made that week. Estimates, jobs sold, revenue. Track your profit, track your reviews. And then track these stats and go back and then review it every week. You don't need a giant dashboard. You don't need some fancy software. Just a spreadsheet, a simple spreadsheet is enough. All you want is visibility on what's going on with the business, right? Because once you know your numbers, you can kind of start making those smart decisions. So stage 4, build a lead machine. All right. When you are starting out in your business, you're still kind of in its new phase. This can be the toughest part for a business owner to kind of break out of, right? Owners become the marketing department, the networking department, the sales department. They drive everything. The phone rings because they're out shaking hands. The referrals come in because, they're personally asking. The business grows because they're constantly pushing it forward, right? The problem is if the owner stops, the business, the growth stops, right? That's not sustainable. Everything kind of depends on the owner. And initially, like when you're first starting, yes, you have to do all of these things to get the business off the ground. And it's a grind, especially marketing. Marketing is a grind. Any business owner will tell you that, it's boots to pavement, right? But as soon as money is rolling in, you hear about many successful business owners talking about reinvesting back into the company. Start reinvesting back into the business. So be it people or processes. So instead of the owner doing all lead generation, start building lead sources that continue working even when you're busy. That could be, Google reviews, SEO, YouTube, Facebook content. It could be, referral partnerships, realtor relationships, property management. It it can be insurance agents, it can be a lot of things for plumbers. And I think the mistake that many plumbing owners, kind of make is trying to do all of them at once, which is very difficult. So instead of, doing them all, kind of pick one. I don't stress out about, going like in-depth SEO, Facebook, YouTube, networking referrals, like kind of all at once, right? Just pick one. Spend the next 90 days becoming excellent, like exceptional at just one thing, and then master it, and then expand from there. A lot of successful companies weren't built on 10 lead sources. They were built on one lead source done exceptionally well. All right, so now moving on to stage 5, create a follow-up system. This is probably one of the biggest leaks in the entire industry, and we'll get to leaks in a bit. I cannot stress this enough. People don't initially trust someone they just met. Even if you've been in business for a while, follow-up and communication are so crucial to closing a deal. Most contractors send an estimate and then wait. Maybe they follow up once, maybe they don't at all. Most of the time they don't. Then, they assume the customer wasn't interested, right? And the truth is, people just get busy. Life happens, right? Kids happen. Work happens. People tend to forget, or they just never heard. They never heard back from. Maybe they never heard back from you again as a business. Your competitor was in their ear more than you were. So there are so many reasons why follow up is so important. So take the time to create a simple follow up schedule, right? And it can be super, super simple. Like go like day 1, day 3, day 7, like and day 14. Like I'm going to send a message, a text, an email, and make sure every estimate gets followed up every single time. No exceptions. Set reminders for yourself and don't make it complicated. Just all you're there to do is just to be helpful. Like, hey John, just wanted to make sure you received the estimate that I sent. Or like, hey Nancy, I just want to send you a text real quick. Any questions I can answer? Morning Jill, just wanted to send you this quick email. Like, still interested in getting that project completed? And that's it. Consistency beats creativity here all the time. Most jobs aren't lost because of price. They're lost because nobody followed up timely. So moving on to stage 6, build a team that reflects your standards. So every owner says, they want great employees. And I go a little more in depth about this in my other video where I talk about the construction industry and hiring good people. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you checking it out. I'll put a link in the description, but every owner says they struggle to find good employees. But have you ever actually defined what that means? Like what does a great technician look like? Seriously, like write it down. Like do they show up on time? They communicate clearly. They wear a clean uniform, respect customers, leave the job site clean. Present options professionally. If you can't define excellence, you can't hire for it, right? But what's more important is that you can't train for it. Like most successful companies would rather hire a coachable employee who doesn't know every skill than hire the ace out of the tech school with a poor attitude. The companies that attract great people usually have clear standards and a positive culture, because everybody knows what's expected. Everybody knows what success looks like. Everybody is held accountable. And everybody is respected and treated like, they're on the same playing field as the boss. Leadership and mentorship are skills second to none when building a solid team. Your work culture, doesn't happen by accident. You build it intentionally. And, you build it one team member at a time. So that kind of goes into stage 7. And this kind of goes with working your teams, the work on the business. This might be the most important stage of all. Is most contractors spend every day working in the business. Like they're running calls, they're fixing problems, they're installing the equipment, they're responding to emergencies. But very few spend time working on the business. Like working, on the business looks a little bit different. It's like working on the business, like reviewing numbers. It's creating systems behind the scenes. It's building training. It's hiring. It is marketing behind the scenes. It is strategic planning, improving processes, improving SOPs. Like this is where growth happens. The challenges I guess the challenge is that it's never urgent. Like there's always another call to run, like another customer to help, another fire to put out on a job. But if you never make it, like if you never make time to improve the business itself, you'll stay stuck. I mean, my recommendation, like block out 2 hours every week, no customers, no service calls, no interruptions, and use that time to improve the company. Like document a process, review your numbers for a couple hours, like create a hiring plan, build a follow-up system, improve something, because the companies that grow aren't built during the service calls. They're built during the time owners spend designing better systems. And that's where the transition begins. Not when you stop being a plumber, but when you start like thinking like an owner. So now that we've gone through the stages of being a business owner, now I kind of want to go into the 7 leaks that kind of happen. So if you've made it through those 7 stages, you've probably noticed something. None of them were really about plumbing. They're about becoming a better business owner, right? And here's why that's so important. Most plumbing companies don't lose money because they don't know how to install a water heater, right? Or because they can't fix a leak. They lose money because of small business problems that happen over and over again. Problems that don't seem like a big deal to them, or a big deal in the moment, because but quietly, like these leaks quietly drain thousands of dollars from the business, like over the course of a year. I like to think of them as like, small leaks, right? Not plumbing leaks, business leaks, right? And just like a small leak under a sink, you might not notice it today, but if you ignore it long enough, the damage becomes super expensive. So now that we've talked about like how great companies grow, let's talk about these like 7 big leaks that kind of hold plumbing companies back. What's interesting is that most of these leaks like aren't plumbing problems, they're business problems. I mean, and the good news is they're usually fixable, but the bad news, most owners don't realize they're happening, and they kind of, because they're so focused on the plumbing part of the business, they always notice, they go unnoticed for a long time. The first leak is probably costing more than all the others combined, and it's missed calls. Like there is this post by Alex Hormozy, who I follow. If you don't follow Alex, I highly recommend it. Smart man, great business owner. But he tells a story about a successful service business who had one great lead gen strategy. And then this business owner had an aunt. And for $60,000 a year, all this aunt's job is to, as soon as a call came in, she was to stop what she was doing, no matter what it was, what she was doing, and call this lead back. And she was only required to do 3 a day, and that was it. And this strategy alone was highly successful for this business. So think about the last time you had a plumbing emergency. Now, maybe your water heater started leaking, maybe a pipe burst, sewer backed up. And what did you do? You grabbed your phone, right? You searched for a plumber and you started calling, right? Now let me ask you something. If the first plumber didn't answer during your emergency, what would you do? You'd call the next one, right? That's what I would do. And then the next one. They didn't answer, you call the next one, right? And the customer isn't sitting there thinking, maybe they're just busy, I'll wait till tomorrow. They're calling whoever answers. And that's exactly what's happening every single day. A lot of plumbing companies spend thousands of dollars generating leads only to miss the phone call that's most important, right? The lead came in, the customer wanted help right away, the opportunity was there, but nobody answered, right? So game over, customer's gone. So the scary part is most owners never know this happens. Most don't know it happens. They don't know how many calls they've missed. They don't know how many jobs they lost. They really don't know how much revenue is disappearing every single week, every single month. So here's a question for you. So what happens in your company when a call gets missed? Is there a process? Is there a voicemail? Does that voicemail get followed up with? Is there a text message? Does somebody call them back? Or do you just hope they leave a message? Do you hope they leave an email? I mean, that's kind of the wrong way to think about it, because hope is not a system. For the next 7 days, track every missed phone call if you're able. Write down, like, did we call them back? How long did it take? Did they become a customer? You'll quickly find out how much money is missed, like how much this is costing you when you're missing these calls. It's a statistic that no business owner cares to acknowledge, but the numbers always astonish them when they've realized what they've been missing. The companies that grow create systems around missed calls. They understand that every phone call is a potential customer, and every missed call is potential revenue walking out the door. So leak number 2, slow response time. So let's say somebody fills out a form on your website, right? How long does it take before somebody responds? Like an hour? A few hours tomorrow morning? Whenever you get around to it, like is that because like you're like, maybe you're on a job site and you just, whenever you can get to it? Like the real problem is your competitors are always trying to respond to the customer as well, right? And the company that responds first is usually the one that gets the win. Think about it. From the homeowner's perspective, they don't know who's the best plumber. They don't know who's most qualified, really. They don't know who's been in business the longest. They don't really research that much, right? What they do know is who's responding to them. Like the company that responds quickly, that builds immediate trust. The company that responds slowly kind of looks disorganized, right? Now, obviously, not every lead turns out into a customer, but if you're consistently the first company to respond, you're giving yourself a huge advantage. And the best part, speed doesn't require more advertising. It doesn't require more leads. It simply requires a better process. And that's it. So leak number 3, no estimate follow-up. This one I hear owners complaining about all the time on social media. A contractor goes out, looks at a job, and builds an estimate, emails it over, and then waits. A week goes by, nothing. A month goes by, nothing. And eventually they conclude that, they must have just not been interested, or something else came up. But maybe they got busy, maybe life got in the way. Maybe they just forgot. Many things could have happened, right? Maybe they're comparing bids. Maybe they simply just need a reminder. But the truth is that most customers aren't thinking about your estimates nearly as much as you're thinking about them, right? They're living their lives. If you don't follow up, somebody else will. One of the easiest systems you can build is a simple follow-up process. Easiest system, and we talked about it earlier in the stages, right? Day 1, call or leave a voicemail. Day 3, send a text reminder. Day 5, call again. Day 7, send a text and follow-up email. Day 9, send a follow-up email. Like, that's it. Nothing fancy, just consistent communication. Not pressure, not aggressive sales tactics, just professional follow-up. Because a surprising number of jobs get sold simply because somebody cared enough to check back in, right? So leak number 4, no review system. So let's play a game real quick. Say you need a plumber, right? You go to Google, which most of us do, right? And company A has 27 reviews and company B has like 283 reviews, right? Which one are you calling? Most people don't even think about it. They spend a half a second thinking about it. They automatically trust the company that has the most reviews. Reviews have completely modernized like word of mouth, right? The problem is most contractors ask for reviews randomly. Sometimes they remember, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll ask, sometimes they just forget. They don't really pay attention to it, but there's just no consistency. Now think about this. Every completed job creates an opportunity for a review. Every single job. Before the end of the day, every day, text your last 5 customers. Simply ask for an honest Google review. Nothing fancy, just like a quick SMS message. You'll probably gain more reviews this week if you try to implement this week than you have in like the last 3 months. If you're not asking, you're leaving reputation growth to chance. The best companies make review requests part of their process because reviews don't just build credibility. They generate future revenue. The customer who helped today may bring you 5 more customers over the next few years through referrals and online reviews. That's a pretty good return for 30 seconds of your time. So here's leak number 5. Forgetting about existing customers. Like plumbing companies spend all their energy chasing strangers, right? New leads, new customers, new opportunities. Meanwhile, they completely ignore people who have already hired them, right? Think about how much effort it takes to earn a new customer. Like you're advertising, networking, you're looking back at referrals, website traffic, phone calls, estimates. You're doing all the follow-up. Now, like all that energy spent, right? Now compare that to somebody who has already paid you to do work. They already know you. They already trust you. They already seen your work, and yet many contractors never contact them again. That makes no sense. What if you checked in like 6 months? What if you reached out a year later? What if you sent like a seasonal reminder? What if you simply stayed visible, or like a 3-month promotional reminder? Like the easiest sell you'll ever make is often to somebody who's already done business with you. The problem is most companies don't have a system to stay in touch, and because they don't have a system, it never happens. Right? Super important. Returning customers, super important. So leak number 6, no process for customer experience. Here's something a lot of contractors kind of overlook. Customers don't remember every detail about their repair. They remember their experience. Did you answer the phone? Did you show up on time? Did you communicate well? Did you clean up after yourself when you completed the job? Did you make them feel confident? Did you make them feel like they mattered? These things are important, and they matter a lot to the customer. And the companies that dominate their markets usually have repeatable customer experiences, and everybody answers the phone the same way. Does everybody follows up the same way? Does everybody handle the problems the same way? Everybody asks for reviews the same way, right? Why does that happen? Because consistency creates trust, and trust creates referrals. So super important. So leak number 7, running the business off of memory. Going back to the stages, right? This brings us kind of full circle, right? The biggest leak in most plumbing companies isn't missed calls, it's not reviews, not follow-up marketing. It's the fact that everything depends on the owner again. The owner remembers everything, they track everything, they solve all their problems, they put out all the fires, and eventually that becomes the bottleneck, because growth requires systems. Not super complicated systems, not expensive systems, just repeatable processes that allow good work to happen consistently. That's how a business scales. I've done my research, I've seen a lot of businesses do it, and that's where I think a lot of contractors need to kind of shift their thinking. The goal isn't just to become a better plumber, the goal is to build a better business, right? Because plumbing skill gets you started, of course. Business skill is what helps you kind of grow. So if you stayed with me this far, here's what I hope you've taken away from this video. Growing a plumbing business isn't about finding one magic marketing strategy. It isn't about buying the newest software. It's not about working 80 hours, a week forever. It's about making small improvements consistently. The 7 stages we talked about today are how great companies are built. The 7 leaks are what keep great companies from becoming, exceptional ones, right? Every successful plumbing company I know is constantly doing 2 things. They're building new systems, and they're fixing leaks that cost them time, money, and customers. So here's my challenge for you. Don't try to fix all 14 things this week, right? Pick one stage where your business needs to grow, and pick one leak that's costing you money, and that's it. Master those 2 things first, and then come back and work on the next one. Because businesses aren't transformed in a week, right? They're transformed one system, one improvement, and one decision at a time. Now, I'd love to hear from you. If you own a business, plumbing business, construction business, whatever it is, if you own a business, I'd love to hear from you. Out of everything we talked about today, which stage are you currently in? And which leak do you think is costing your business the most money? Like, leave it down in the comments below. I read every single one. And it also gives me ideas for future videos that kind of, can help you grow your business, right? If this video gave you value, consider subscribing, because this channel is all about helping contractors build better businesses, not just becoming better tradesmen, right? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.